This is the Erin Cruz Show. Politics for the people and by the people. With your host, Erin Cruz.
Welcome to another edition of the Erin Cruz Show. We have a fabulous show tonight. We have candidates, amazing report from somebody we are sending up to Sacramento, and the initiatives he wants to bring forward for 2019. Pretty cool, so make sure that you stay tuned and enjoy. Now for the special guest you've all been waiting for. So we have a very special guest on with us this evening. He has an extensive background. I'm going to tell you, I was looking at his bio. It's pretty amazing. He is a retired lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Army. He has 6 years of combat deployment in the Middle East, where he was a diplomatic participant in Kuwait as the director host, Nation Affairs. And did I say that right? I mean, that's so much to say, seriously. But he was also involved in special operations. And this is really important because we're going to be talking about some technical issues tonight relating to Iran and China. These are hot topic items, and they shouldn't be taken lightly. And we need people who have a background in the Middle East, in some of those hot spot areas, who has perspective. And another part about perspective is what Sargent is actually doing for a living right now. His main focus. He's working with, and actually is the CEO of NEC. Welcome to the Erin Cruz Show. We can't wait to hear everything that you have to share with us because we need help here in America understanding these complex issues.
No, thank you very much, Erin. Much appreciated. It's a really pleasure because it's individuals like you who give us an opportunity to kind of share different perspectives, maybe different approaches to what's happening within the Middle East specifically and even globally when it comes to American interests and foreign policy. So it gives us an opportunity and a platform to discuss a wide variety of issues.
Right. Well, it's important, and these issues, I think, are not taken into balance and perspective when we're talking about the media of today, right? It's a lot of hot topic, headline-catching things when these are big, serious issues that we're facing today, especially where it's relating to Iran and China. We've seen a lot of alliances going on here across the globe with Russia, China and Iran, and it almost seems like a love triangle since Trump has kind of put down his foot on some trade issues and other things. What do you think in terms of these foreign policy initiatives that are moving forward out of the administration right now? It's how these other nations are reacting and how they're going to impact us in the United States.
Well, one of the problems we have is because the current administration is still dealing with the fallout of what the previous administration had made decisions on, especially when it came to China. On the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, we have an article that we posted which looked at power relations and the new model of power relations. And really it started with the Obama administration where in 2012, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi had proposed in the Brookings Institute maybe a new pathway for a relationship between China and the United States. And in this case, the previous administration accepted it. Even before Obama was elected to be the president of the United States, he had already started negotiating with Iran for possibly having a deeper relationship with Iran. So what we're dealing with under the current administration is trying to reverse some of those decisions that were made. And it takes time. If you have had a policy in the region for 8 years, it takes 8 years to get it back to baseline focuses, 2 years in a new direction. And you're looking at possibly a decade to try to at least readjust what the U.S. foreign policy is. So part of what he's dealing with currently is based on what happened in 2012.
Right. And I think we live in an instant environment where people want solutions and they want them now. And in the case of this situation, I mean, it's complex. It's highly complex, and like you say, it could take upward of a decade to resolve and to get back on track. We've seen a lot of posturing by China lately, and mainly with respect to Iran and its oil deals. I mean, what do you think there? And President Trump is talking about possibly doing trade deal with China and bringing them to the table and agreeing to some of the issues that are being presented. But what do you think? Do you think that that's a good idea? Do you think that he'll be objective about his approach?
The issue with China is that China has been operating on a 100-year plan, and they're way ahead of schedule of being able to accomplish what they wanted. We've always been behind. We've been chasing them, just like we chased them in Africa. And China has pretty deep roots in Africa. What they're trying to do now is bypass our capability of controlling the seaways in Southeast Asia. And they are striking deals, moving companies in that are even working with our allies at times. When I was in January of this past year in Thailand, we looked at what was happening with the Rohingya genocide and realized that it was really a Chinese company that is pushing his interest for a pipeline to bring Iranian oil, Middle Eastern oil through. In order to do that, they had to clear out the area where the Rohingyas are because the Chinese were worried that the Rohingyas and Islamic extremists would be used against them for their interests. That being the case, it pushed a lot of those Rohingyas into Thailand currently, which has destabilized southern Thailand, which is our major ally.
Right.
Correct. So these are the issues that we're dealing with, and currently POTUS, he has a short-term policy that he could maybe strike something to offset some of the things China is doing, but really American foreign policy is a 2-year policy because Congress changes every 2 years. And as you know, currently now we have a split Congress, which is going to make it a little bit more difficult for him to be able to push his agenda, at least during this next 2 years remaining, and hopefully if he gets reelected again, try to get something reversed over the next 4 years.
Right. Well, I do certainly hope that when the next election cycle goes through, we do regain that ground in the House. That would help. We didn't lose as many seats as we thought we might, and that's good news. But we do have some issues trying to get those things through with the numbers as they are. But I was reading something very interesting that China is going to take France's spot at the oil table with another foreign interest, and as it relates to Iran. And I'm just wondering, France was talking about, well, they can't really be involved because of the U.S. sanctions. Well, what makes it so flexible for China to be involved? And how they can maneuver these things and manipulate things and get away with the issues that they're pushing. That's a concern. They're very aggressive.
It is a concern, but one of the problems we have is Asia, as much as we want to have effects on it, is still an ocean removed. The Chinese have a large influence, even with our allies.
Right.
The same company that is really behind the project that is causing the Rohingya genocide, which is the China International Trust Investment Corporation, is the same company that is actually extracting uranium out of certain areas, that is making its way back to North Korea. Is the same company that is pulling a lot of the natural resources out of Australia, which is one of our allies. The contract that they have there is the same company that is striking deals for ammunition factories that come in and are able to maybe somewhat destabilize the region for their benefit, to include in Thailand. Same company that is developing ports within Thailand itself. So for us to say we're going to sanction someone, it becomes difficult. As an example, when we put the sanctions against Iran, we still kept one of the Iranian ports open, not to be affected by sanctions, because India, which is a major bloc that is going to be able to block against China, needs still to get good services and oil out of Iran in order for it to be able to be an ally for us and a strong ally to be able to buffer against China. So these are some of the decisions that are made globally. I don't think a lot of people understand that affect how far we can stop Chinese expansion within the region. China will expand, but we can stop the expansion. It's just a matter of how long would it take, what we have to do to be able to buffer it. One of the problems we run into ourselves in 2014, October 30th, Japan bought U.S. debt. For us to even try to increase our interest rates back in the States, which would help us maybe recover some of our losses, will negatively affect Japan. It will destroy their economy because they're holding our debt. So these are a lot of the issues that we have kind of tied ourselves into that limit what we are able to do both economically and politically within the region.
Right. Well, like you said, like I said, they're complex. Like you said, it's going to take time. And, thank you for coming on the show to talk with us today a little bit about this, because the media isn't doing a very good job the big mainstream media isn't doing a good job at sharing the complexities. They just throw a lot of information and they don't give any sources. So this is our viewers are really going to be able to appreciate this material. Now, you're doing some work with your company. I wanted to talk a little bit about that and their partnership throughout the country and throughout the world. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I established an Erin Center for Strategic Engagement on September 11, 2014, in honor of the memory of the 3,000 Americans that were murdered by terrorists in our country. And really, part of what we tried to do, we're both a think tank, but we're also an operational organization. From 2014 to 2017, we advised the Syrian Christian multi-force structures that were fighting against ISIS both in Iraq and Syria. We established the United Assyrian Appeal, UA United Assyrian Appeal, which actually helped give money to the multi-families of those fighters so that the fighters can concentrate fighting the fight, because we were not getting any support from the U.S. side at that time under the Obama administration, or to include from any other NATO partner to be able to support and save them. And part of what I also do, part of the process is we look at all the genocides, and that's why I was in Burma, seeing the linkages that are between what's going to be the next role of China probably in the Middle East. If Russia and the United States cannot work together in the Middle East, eventually China will come in and pick up the pieces of the fight between the two. So recently I just came back from supporting the Ravens Challenge, which is held in Thailand itself, where the explosive ordnance teams are trained from all around the world, and also SWAT is trained on the newest technologies that are out there to defeat IEDs. What we do from the Near East, we pick up the lessons learned when we did from the Mosul clearing operation of what ISIS was using, how they were using these IEDs to affect coalition forces in the most current situation, and bringing that information back to Thailand and sharing it with the Ravens Challenge group in order for them to be able to execute in our lanes for training our coalition partners throughout the world.
That's really important. I know that the American people are frustrated. Under Barack Obama, we saw our military vastly pulled apart, depleted, and the infrastructure and our relationships with the rest of the world. We saw it. It felt like the world was on fire in terms of some of the hot spots and the issues globally. It's great to hear that you played a part in building alliances and really working towards serving people and giving them information and taking up that gap, if you will. I think it's important. Now, I think that the people need to understand a little bit more about what's happening in Burma. I haven't heard much about Burma since, in the media. They don't really talk about that very much. Can you give us some insight into some of the things that are going on over there?
Really,
You
it's
don't mind.
the ethnical cleansing. Look, China realized a long time ago that it's surrounded by Islamic nations.
Hmm.
And China is suppressing any Islamic minorities within its country, literally in camps.
Mm.
Outside of its country, it has to cleanse them out, get them out of the way, because it knows that it is possible that one day the Islamic extremists can be used against its interests. So what it does, it literally comes in the case of Burma, it uses the Burmese military contacts that it has to cleanse out the Rohingyas and pushes them into Thailand, which is an ally of ours,
Right.
destabilizing southern Thailand, protecting its oil interests. Its main focus is really to try to bypass the Strait of Malacca in order to be able to corner 80% of the global shipping within the region. Imagine what that would do for U.S. capabilities and interests and our naval ability to affect China's expansion within the region. As it does this and uses whatever means possible to promote its political, economic, multi-interest in the region, it affects our ability to work with our allies. As an example, the Burmese parliament majority is military. They work the bloc. So even with our allies within the Burmese government, it is very difficult when we try systematically to make some changes that are going to stop China's expansion within the region. The generals that are on the payroll of the Chinese literally vote as a bloc and block it internal to the system.
Right.
This is the same problem we have in Pakistan. A lot of the parliament members in Pakistan either have a business relationship or are even directly paid by the Chinese government, which affects what we can do in Pakistan, what is happening in Baluchistan, with China expanding its abilities there economically, setting up its roots. It affects us because, like I said, the same company that is responsible for the $14 billion project Streamline within the regions of Burma is the same one that is working with the Australian government that is the main extractor of Australian natural resources and that are being used by it for its benefits. I think we could defeat China economically. We just have to get our allies to understand that when they work with China, we're not saying don't work with them, they have to understand how to work with them to ensure that their long-term interests and our long-term interests are not affected in the region.
So, in your opinion, in your professional opinion, and what have you, do you see us as being strong enough in our message with China in their involvement globally, and also supporting our allies strong enough to the point where they work with us as opposed to China? I mean, is Trump being effective in his approach?
I think the current POTUS has the right approach. The problem not our systems are able to support him, or whether or not we have the political will internally to actually help him be able to stop Chinese expansion. Again, I go back to what I said.
I'm not saying that we need to stifle any one nation, but
Correct.
my point is I guess, some of the things that it's trying to accomplish, it being China, it's hostile almost. It's maybe a strong word, but that's the way I and many others might view it. And we want to retain our alliances. I, as an American citizen, want to know that our alliances know that they are cherished and that they would like to lean on us more as opposed to China. But, is President Trump able to be as effective as maybe he should be? It's a concern.
He can be effective. It depends on what Congress decides to do to support him. Unfortunately, if Congress is going to be too busy mudslinging at each other across the aisle, worrying about who's going to be the next elected representative in 2020, that's not going to solve the problem. It's going to make it very difficult for the POTUS to be able to economically at least have some blocks against China. Again, if it wasn't for the Obama administration agreeing to Chinese vision in the region, and this is one of the reasons we mentioned in the Near East, we said, look, China has a different focus on how it tries to push its wants and desires within the region. I mean, let's just as an example say tomorrow there's an attack in mainland China, and if that mainland China attack somehow is tied to our maybe taking place from Thailand as an example, southern Thailand where a lot of Islamic extremists are operating, China will use it as an excuse to put pressure economically on Thailand, which is a strategic partner for us, or even may introduce depending multi-forces within certain areas to be able to say we have a right, just like you had a right to go in Afghanistan because you were attacked, you have a right to come into Thailand or other areas. So it has put us in a position where we really don't have this strong leverage that we would like to have. And it's a matter of us at least having Congress understand it to give the president some support to expand our footprint diplomatically, politically,
Right.
economically within those countries.
Right, exactly. And secure our interests. I think that instability and chaos are loved by politicians. It creates talking points, and it really spurs on their base, and the media loves that. But what we really need as a country is strong diplomatic relations and conversations to be able to foster the type of environment we need globally and nationally here in the United States. Can you please, I really want people to be able to connect with you, learn more about your organization, and let them know how they can get involved, at least in the process of understanding more about what's going on globally, because this really impacts us. And my listeners are very interested in, especially China and those types of things. So please, if you could.
The best thing we could do is if they go to the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement site. We're also on Twitter and Facebook. What we try to do is we try to teach folks link analysis of how to understand on the open source how nations talk to each other through open source media. And when we talk about link analysis, linking events with what is within the entire region. For me to be able to have a say in what is happening to those certain Christians in Ninive Plain, I have to understand what's happening in Thailand, what's happening in Japan economically, and how they bought our debt. I have to understand what's happening in North Korea. I have to understand what model North Korea is using to affect economic jockeying between China and the U.S. and how it will affect Iran's future as to what deal it may strike with the United States. All these characters are kind of globally as a family tied to each other, and we try our best to teach the folks as to how to look at the news. The other piece for us is, for us, we have United Australian Appeal, which is the only mainstay that we've had, which was a policy failure from the U.S. side that we had to create. It was to be able to support the Christian multi-families of the Australian Christians in the Middle East until finally a decision is made politically as to whether or not they should give them an opportunity to have their own region where they could at least protect themselves and save themselves under their own security platforms and also develop their region and also have their own governance or say in governance to bring some stability to the Middle East.
Right. Well, we love it when any power, well, the people are powerful, right? People underestimate their ability to impact the world, and we love at any point when people are given more control about the information they receive and applying it. It's something that the younger generations are losing hold of is their ability to impact. I want to thank you for coming on the Erin Cruz show today. We talked about Iran, we talked about China, we didn't really talk about Russia so much. We talked about POTUS, President Trump. We didn't talk, though, yet about Korea, North Korea. And I really kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that. Do you have a few minutes to share with us how they're manipulating some of these big power players? Because it seems like, they're trying to have the world conversation, and it's they've quieted down a little bit on media, but they're still there. They're still actively participating. What's going on there between North Korea and China?
I think North Korea realized that the only way world nations would come to the table if it talked about a nuclear bomb. And Iran has figured that one out, too. I always said the nuclear deal with Iran was not a nuclear deal, it was an economic deal. North Korea figured a long time ago that in order for it to survive as a nation, it would have to purge its people, get the top classes loyal to them, which private schooling in North Korea is limited to only the top, and create a cheap labor force, which it did. Now, everything that had happened in North Korea was blamed on China, because China was the main nation that was allowing North Korea to continue as it was. When it got to a position and it developed its workforce, it took some 40 years to get to this point. North Korea realized now it's time to sit down with the United States, with the current POTUS, and try to strike a deal. North Korea is now in a position where it could be the future of cheap labor within Asia, and it could be one of the fastest developing countries in the world, and to use the nuclear bomb as a means to flip China and United States and have them fight against each other for the interests of North Korea. So as this has played its cards right till now, I think that over the next decade, you will probably see the economy of North Korea become one of the most powerful economies to include where it can influence politics in South Korea, given it has a cheap labor force that most of the companies around the world are currently looking for. And China cannot provide that any longer. The Chinese workforce that we were looking at some 20 years ago who was riding their bicycles to factories now take their Mercedes to the factory. So they have evolved into a lifestyle that they're not interested in. So Iran is trying to do the same thing, and Iran has very highly educated doctors and lawyers that are looking for jobs. It has one of the youngest and the most smartest educated group, and if there's ever a change in Iranian politics, those markets would be where Europe, United States, Russia, China would be competing for, and this is in a strategic location where it's very important for us, regardless, to develop it as one of the largest allies, possibly for the next 40 years. So both North Korea and Iran are playing that card, and I think have brought the world nations to the table by using the concept of nuclear bomb as a means or a economic development as other means.
Interesting, and it is. It's. I would call it the great manipulation, and it's unfortunate that the people of these countries. We talk about Iran and we talk about North Korea in such negative light. The people there are subjected to these big powerful leaders who pretty much use them, and it's humanitarian wise, especially in North Korea. These people are working for nothing pretty much and starving, and if those same people, like we do as a nation, realize their power and their ability to interact, that would be so wonderful, and it would be great to see. I'm a humanitarian at heart. I love people. I really do. And to see people oppressed like North Koreans are, and even some people in Iran, humanitarian issues, it's a concern. And I want great things for the people of the world. But how do we get those powerful players to realize that their people are powerful? And how do we get the tyrants out of the way? That's the shift. And when they use them and manipulate and nuclear bombs to extort money from powerful players like Barack Obama, who basically just handed over, that's a concern as well. And the media manipulating the people and basically scare tacticking and here in the United States at least, I see it from a different perspective. And I'm concerned because our children don't understand historically the roles that Iran and North Korea have played long term. And like you said, it took 40 years to get to the space we are today. It's no easy task. It's been a slow go. And do you think ever that Iran, and I know there have been talks about it in Iran, but even North Korea will ever be in a space where they become more of a democratic society?
You're
I
not
know I
looking at
threw a lot out
democratic,
there and
you're
I was
looking at
talking,
maybe
but
yeah, yeah. No, that's okay. I mean, you're heading in the right direction, Erin. You're looking at maybe functional democracies is what we're looking at in the Middle East. I think Iran, by the virtue of it sits geographically.
right.
I mean, Iran affects, I was asked about Afghanistan as an example, if you want to look at it in the microcosm. For us to sit in Afghanistan, we can affect Southern Caucasus, that means we can affect Russia, we could affect China. To the east, we could affect Iran. To the west, to the south, Pakistan. Same thing with Iran. Iran is poised in a position where even though we have sanctions, tight sanctions against them, we still have to allow one of their ports open so that India, one of our allies, are going to buffer against China, can function. So initially, when Barack Obama went into Iran, he tried to strike an economic deal. The problem was that the Europeans betrayed the American interest by literally going to the Iranians and saying, look, instead of doing business with an American company, you could see in the streets they're screaming, your own people are screaming death to America. Why don't you come through us and we'll bring those American companies under our wing into the Iranian economy? Well, Barack Obama was working almost 8 years trying to get that economy developed for the future of the United States, and he wasn't going to give that up. I think it was our allies not working with us which put us in a position where we are currently. Iran can tomorrow, as an example, pick up the phone and say, look, you see all the problems you're having with Saudi. How about why don't you come over here and we'll renegotiate maybe this contract? And I think if they do that, they put our administration in a difficult position because President Trump would have to go and at least sit at the table and listen to the new terms that are being renegotiated. At the end of the day, it's going to be our economic ties to North Korea, to Iran, that are going to allow us to have long-standing influences against others that are against our interests globally within the region. And if we are not going to get it right, eventually, like I said, in the Middle East, the Chinese are going to pick up the pieces for themselves, and then once they go in, we're not going to be able to dislodge them again. And in Asia, the same thing. Either we are going to win by striking those deals with North Korea, or eventually China will just overwhelm all partners politically, economically, as they have tried to do currently with striking deals with the Australian government for extraction of precious resources out of Australia and running pipelines through Burma, causing the Rohingya genocide and destabilizing southern Thailand.
Right. Yeah, that word genocide hits me. It's a concern. These are big deals that are going on. They're big strategies that impact us all, and it's hard when they really tear apart people and countries when certain interests are involved and don't want to do right by the regions that they're involved in. You say genocide, and under Barack Obama, we didn't hear the truth about a lot of things that went on globally, and there was a lot of impact worldwide with people. I'm moved. I'm sorry. I'll take a deep breath.
No, I mean, look, I'm an Assyrian, so for me, the genocide of the root of Christianity in the Middle East, the Assyrian genocide, was just absolutely deplorable. And I knew the reason why we were not getting the support that certain Christians needed in northern Iraq and in Syria was because of straight political decisions that were made by world
politics,
Correct.
not people.
And to lose the roots of Christianity, 8,000-year-old culture would have been at the expense of the United States. Even today, if the Syrian Christians are wiped out from the Middle East, guess what? It was under America's watch, regardless of how many other nations were involved there. And I always said to our folks, when you give money and weapons to the enemies of these Syrian people, and you force them by even against the Iraqi constitution to have to be subject to others in the region, you are responsible for it. And if it's just because you might be able to make a couple of dollars less on a barrel of oil, that's not the way to go about it. If you look at it from a long-term perspective, these neighbors can live with each other in a functional democracy. The area can be stabilized, and it will pay off better for you in the long run. If it wasn't for what is happening in the region, we wouldn't have individuals with the ISIS ideology killing people in France and in England and Belgium and the United States. And because you don't know how to handle that region, you have, opened this breach point, which has destabilized not just that region, it has affected everyone in Asia, and has affected even our interests in the U.S. here. So I think you could always have a long-term vision on striking these deals for the benefit of everyone. And if I could get the certain Christians in northern Iraq to have their own region in accordance with the Iraqi constitution to be able to safeguard themselves, it actually makes America stronger. Because now you have an ally, and the more friends you have, the less enemies you have that can actually function in support of our global interest, which is to bring these type of functional democracies to the region, and everybody at the end of the day still can make their dollars. Right. It's just to make it in a much more moral and ethical way than some are trying to do currently.
Right. Communication. I love communication, and that's the breakdown of it globally is problematic. But I'm glad to see that you have solutions and you're making headway. And your website, we've provided that to our listeners and our viewers, and hopefully they take a look, because you do have a lot of information online available for people to learn more. Well, thank you for coming on the Erin Cruz Show. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll talk with you soon and follow up with your progress.
No, thank you, Erin. Again, like I said, Near East Center for Strategic Engagement to get the information, and United Assyrian Appeal, 501c3 if they want to help with donations, especially during this Christmas time for us to help the Assyrian Christian families in the Middle East.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for all you do to help the Christians around the world. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Erin.
God bless. Take care.
God bless.
We will return to the Erin Cruz Show in just a moment.
You're standing on the edge of disaster, telling me you can't go on. I can hear your heart beating faster, wondering what you did wrong. Broken inside, losing your fight. I know what it's like to break, so let me hold you through the pain. I know what you're fighting for. You're in the middle of a war. Even down on your broken road, there's still hope. You are not alone. Tell me what you're waiting for. Just let me open up the door to give you hope. You are not alone. You're not alone. You are not alone. You're not alone. You are not a slave to the master, a prisoner inside your mind. I can even see what you're after, but I will never leave your side. Never lose hope, the end of your road, staring death face to face. Now will you stand and walk away? I know what you're fighting for. You're in the middle of a war, even down on your broken road. There's still hope. You are not alone. Tell me what you're waiting for. Just let me open up the door to give you hope. You are not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone. You are not alone. You're not alone.
We want to make sure and provide you an update. We have the 100,000 socks. Jeff Gonzalez, he is pushing for 100,000 socks to help homeless and needy here in the Coachella Valley and surrounding area. Please reach out. I'm going to put all the information in the comments so that way you have the information. You can go ahead and look up Jeff Gonzalez on Facebook and 100,000 socks. It will pull up. You can go to my page, Erin Cruz, my professional page on Facebook. His page is on there as well. There are 100 different ways that you can find Jeff Gonzalez. Make sure that you get plugged in. If you live in the area, if you live in Coachella Valley, we need your help. The homeless are really, really cold right now and can use socks. So please contribute, donate if you can. White socks, men's socks. He said preferably the ones that go halfway up the calf, and that would be awesome. So look in those comments, get plugged in, and donate some socks.
And now, back to the Erin Cruz Show. Here's Erin Cruz.
Hello and welcome back to the Erin Cruz Show. We have on with us a special guest. His name is Gregory Wrightstone. He is going to talk with us a little bit about climate hoax, climate change, wildfire fiasco, that big report that just came out. They're trying to scare people, folks, and what we need to do is get level-headed about this, look at the facts, get back to the facts. Thank you for coming on the Erin Cruz Show, Greg.
Oh, thanks for having me, Erin. Glad to be here.
Well,
but I'm a little bit angry after I'm in Dallas now, speaking at a conference. I read the report coming over on the plane, and it's worse than it's awful. It's a manifest, an environmentalist manifesto.
It's huge, right? I mean, it's giant.
Yeah, and it's 1,600 pages.
Yeah.
And I've just when we get off here, I'll finish it up and I'll post it. But I've got a new blog talking about that. And one of the what I do is I've selected one part of this new national climate assessment. Now, bear in mind, this is a government mandated assessment that's supposed to occur every 4 or 5 years, whatever. And it's the last one was pretty bad, and this one has doubled down on climate alarmism, and it's really bad. But what I've done is selected one item to talk about and expose, which is really the poster child for this climate report, is forest fires, wildfires. It's on the cover of the summary review. It's on the back cover of the summary review, and it's interspersed throughout the entire overview, chapter 1 of this report out of 1,600 pages, stating as a fact that forest fires are increasing, and they're increasing because of man-made climate change. And the facts, the science, the data are stark. It's absolutely clear-cut, and all the fire experts agree that actually, contrary to what your listeners or viewers might think, fires have been in a long-term decline. They just have. And it's not me saying that. I'm using the government's own sources for the United States. The United States, the National Interagency Fire Service or Center shows, and you can go on that and Google that yourself and find out what they say. And look at the data. And what I did was, I last night, as I was digging into this, I was saying, why do they keep saying that forest fires are increasing when they're decreasing? And they had one chart. And what they did was they took a spot of area burned from 1984 to 2016 and said, oh, well, look, area burned has increased. And it has slightly. What they forgot to mention, no, they didn't forget, it's intentional misrepresentation of data. The data went back to 1928.
Right.
Did they show that? No. What they showed was from 1984 to 2016. If they had showed the entire data set, which a scientist is obligated to do, the scientific process says you don't cherry pick data.
Right.
What they did is cherry pick the data. It goes back to 1928. What you would have seen was that area burned has declined by more than 75% since 1928. A significant decline.
No,
And the number of fires have decreased by similar numbers. It's crazy.
I mean, it's outrageous. It's irresponsible, and as a matter of fact, this report is only done every so often, right? Every few years.
Right.
And we rely on this data to make future projections and planning and other things, right? It should be accurate.
Yeah, according to the Paris, if we look at according to Bjorn Lomborg of the University of Copenhagen, he's estimated that if the full enactment of the Paris Climate Accord would remove $100 trillion in wealth from the developed nations and transfer that to the undeveloped nations. It's a power grab. It's a transfer of wealth from the haves to the have-nots. And even if we according to his work, we've looked at if we implemented this, spent $100 trillion, well, what would we get? 0.3 of a degree Fahrenheit decrease in temperatures. I don't think that's a very good investment. And if I'm going to spend,
and would we get that? Would we really get that? Would that really? Would that really happen? Do we know that? Is there any guarantee?
No, there's not. But I mean, it's
throwing money at it.
I know that.
But
yes, it is. It's throwing.
But okay, so this is my concern. If you don't mind me just looking at this, because we're talking about 1984 to present, pretty much. And in this case, we have government who could have very likely here in the United States, in particular, could have been California, interfering with different processes, which might also have increased fire burn areas in some ways, because they're mismanaging lands, they're mismanaging forests. I mean, in terms of the north of California, they're very, very concerned with what's not happening, what the government is not doing as a result of different regulations and the EPA and all these kinds of things. So, this is a concern. It's a very big manipulation.
If you go to my web, if your viewers go to my website, inconvenientfacts.xyz, I've got a page devoted to forest fires.
We'll put that below right here for you. So.
Okay, that'd be great. And then also on my blog, I've got a specific blog on the California fires, and you'll see there the chart from CAL FIRE documenting that forest fires in California, the number has declined by 50% over the last 30 years. And that goes back, the latest, I think, was 2016 data. But the number of fires have decreased. Now, during that time, if you look at area burned, it's slightly increased, which means that each fire in California has roughly doubled. And what we see is the size of fires and probably the intensity of fires has increased greatly. If you look, the Sierra Nevadas and the mountainous ranges now controlled by the U.S. Forest Service are case in point. If you go back and look at photographs from the 1850s after the gold rush, you'll see that there are large grassland areas now that are completely forested because fires had swept through there almost on an annual basis. So you'll see that the pine trees, the boughs, the first branches are maybe 20 feet in the air. And that's because as these low-intensity fires would sweep through, they go through and the trees would survive. What we have today is this huge accumulation of undergrowth trees, and now when you have a fire, it's much more intense, and actually the trees die. And before the grass fire, they'd sweep through and everything was fine, and the wildlife would survive. And so it's really a a big change in these forest management practices. And
Right.
the Sierra Nevada Conservancy says that there are 5 times too many trees per acre today. Now think about that.
Mm-hmm.
The second, this is an interesting fact you may not have thought of, but the second greatest soil moisture loss is due to transpiration of the trees. In other words, the trees are, all plants breathe in and out, right?
Right.
And during that process, there's a huge amount of moisture loss. During that, if you have 5 times too many trees per acre, those trees are now competing for that scarce soil moisture in the soil. So they're competing and exacerbating an already bad arid condition there. And it also leads, with all these trees, the Sierra Nevada Conservancy says it's leading to burr beetle infestation because they can move between trees easier. So when you get, especially in the, perhaps not in the Sierra Nevadas, but throughout the West, the bark beetle has been bad with trees. Now you got a large stand of densely packed trees that are dead, all right, just waiting for a spark.
Right, just waiting. I mean, it's prime real estate for fires. And, you know, this is part of the issue is I think that people are frustrated with, as I'm hearing, is that the government is telling us they want our money for these different accords and different climate fixes, right? But yet they're not doing their job in making sure that these lands are kept up and managed. Now, what do you think is a solution here? Because we have to get out the truth, right? The facts.
Well, that's going to be difficult because the media is controlled by leftists and pro climate change. Well, I believe in climate change. Okay, it's happening. It's just not us. But the media is dominated by these alarmists that believe that we've got catastrophic man-made warming. And it's just not so. So what we've got to do, how do you fight that? Doing like I do. I've got a really powerful tool that we're in development right now. We're developing a smartphone app for my all of my 60 inconvenient facts in the book. You'll be able to pull up, I'm going to pull it up here for you, but you're going to have something like this on your phone. You're going to be able to pull up 60 of the most impactful charts that you need to dispute this. Excuse me, let me take a drink here. That you'll be able to go that way if your idiot nephew from Boulder tells you at Christmas dinner that polar bears are going extinct, you can go, oh, wait a minute. Here's a chart. Right, here's a chart of 60 years of polar bear data that show they've been increasing for 60 years. And you know what? It's fully sourced. You'll be able to go here. And it's important for your viewers and people to have not just a chart, but a chart that's referenced and sourced. What's the chart? Because you can post anything and make a chart and say anything. But instead, what I do is I provide highly referenced source data from peer-reviewed articles, studies, NASA, NOAA, government sources, and they'll all be here, and you're going to have that data in the palm of your hands.
So we can't just take a small snapshot. We can look at the big picture, and we can actually have the information.
Absolutely. So we're excited about that. It'll probably be available in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, so that's wonderful. That's so wonderful to hear. I want to tell you, thank you so much for coming on the Erin Cruz Show, Gregory. We want to make sure and have you back after you have your app done and you have some updates for us on some of the things that are happening across the world, because really this is a big issue. They have the leftists all up in arms about these things, and people need to keep level-headed and get the real, true information. Really quick before we end the interview, could you give people, I'm going to put it down here in the comments, but could you go ahead and give people your website? And
inconvenientfacts.xyz. Check out my YouTube channel. I got some pretty cool videos there, and that's Inconvenient Facts. If you go to YouTube, I got a great one on witch hunts in Europe, the relationship between the late Middle Ages witch hunts and temperature. Really interesting.
Well, folks, there you have it. Gregory, he is trailblazing. He's going to give us all the information that we need to know to combat the lies of the left and to get truth out to the people in America. Thank you again, Gregory, for coming on the Erin Cruz Show.
Good night. Thank
God
you.
bless.
We will return to the Erin Cruz Show in just a moment.
Thank you again for joining us for this edition of the Erin Cruz Show. You know, we like to connect patriots together and help tighten our communities. And many of our communities this year have been affected and impacted by wildfires. Entire communities lost homes. Over 10,000, 20,000 people more. I mean, the numbers are just outrageous. How many people are now homeless that are waiting to hear what's next from insurance companies and trying to figure out where do we go from here? One of the individuals who comes close to our heart was referred to us by one of our volunteers. And in fact, it says baby Emily, but baby Emily hasn't been born yet. Baby Emily is still in her mother's stomach. Baby Emily is homeless. Baby Emily lost her home in the Paradise Fire. Her parents barely got out of their home alive, and all of her baby supplies for her new coming to this world were lost, burned, and charred in the fire. Baby Emily needs your help. In the comments below, you're going to find a GoFundMe account. All of those funds will go directly to Baby Emily's parents to help them recap anything that they lost in terms of needs for the baby. I know people have reached out, people are helping, but they need more help. They've lost everything. They're a new couple with a brand new home of theirs together to raise baby Emily in, and they've lost everything. So anything that you can do to help, $5, $2, $10, if you can afford 20 or 200, we'll accept whatever you can provide, and baby Emily will be grateful. Thank you. Please go ahead and share this information, the link with all of your friends on your social media, and impart to them the importance of what's happened and how they can make the difference in this little one's life, this person who hasn't even come into this world yet. Thank you again for your support of the Erin Cruz Show and also for connecting with fellow patriots like little baby unborn Emily. God bless you, and stay tuned for the rest of the show.
And now, back to the Erin Cruz Show. Here's Erin Cruz.
Hello and welcome back to the Erin Cruz Show. We have on with us a return guest. Yes, Joshua Scott. He ran for the 32nd Congressional District in the state of California. We are so excited to have you back on the show, Scott.
Thanks
Mr.
for having
Scott.
me back. I'm stoked to be here with you.
Is it Josh or Joshua? I mean, we like to be personal. I always call you Joshua.
You know what? As when I was growing up, all my friends called me Josh. But once I entered the professional political arena, I feel like Josh was a little more professional. So I think it's a good way to go from here on out. But you can call me whatever you like.
Fabulous, Mr. Scott. No, I'm just kidding.
There we go.
Well, I mean, you just finished out a strong run for United States Congress. You're one of the youngest, right?
I was the youngest, actually.
Yes, even younger than Morgan Murtaugh?
Right, yeah, she was the youngest for a while, and then since I kind of threw my
She's
hat
the
into the
youngest
ring.
female.
Yes, exactly. And she did really well. I mean, we had some really strong young conservatives putting it out there, and I'm really proud that we were able to kind of start that movement going. We obviously have a lot of work to do, but there was a few of us out there, and I'm really proud of it.
It was wonderful. That's wonderful. I mean, you ran. You decided to go for it. Feet to the pavement. How did things turn out? Because a lot of people are frustrated, especially with the state of California in particular. You know, we gained the Senate, right? I mean, in terms of what we've done historically speaking, we've gained in the Senate. We lost some House seats, but we didn't lose as many as presidents historically have lost in the past. I would look at that as a win-win-win-win-win all the way around. But in the state of California, we had some hard hits. How is your district doing? I mean, is there voter fraud? I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, you know, it was definitely tough for us here in Southern California on election night. You know, sitting there watching the news and seeing all of the results come in nationwide, I have to say I was pretty proud of our party, and I wrote about it on social media because it was definitely a pretty historic night. But at the same time, us here in Southern California, we definitely took it on the chin. We lost quite a few seats. But over in the 32nd District, my campaign, I am incredibly proud of what we were able to accomplish in such a short amount of time.
Right.
For those who don't know, we didn't start our campaign until about 3 weeks before the primary with the motive of providing the people with a choice because the incumbent Democrat was running unopposed. And we said, absolutely no way can we let that happen in such an important election. So we got after it. We got on the ballot after being a write-in candidate, and the 4-month campaign from July through November was absolutely incredible. I was able to touch so many people in such a short amount of time. People were inspired that a Republican decided to step up in a region where there hasn't been much Republican success for a while. So over those few months, we literally sprinted all day, every day, touched as many people as possible. Didn't really matter what your political ideology was. I wasn't only knocking on Republican registered houses. I was hitting every house, calling every voter, and talking to everyone in the street. And it was pretty awesome because so many people, you know, the partisan politics aside, you say, hey, I'm here running to provide you with a choice. I believe in our democracy. I believe in our country. I'm the youngest guy out here doing it. And we really got a positive reception. And I really do believe it's something that we're going to build off of. And we haven't wasted any time. I mean, November 7th, I was back in my office talking to people and working on our next project. So I'm really excited for the future, even though, you know, obviously things didn't work out so well for our party. I'm still driven, and I plan on being a leader for the time being and for the foreseeable future.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So it sounds like you have plans. You're not going to really reveal those plans because they're in the works right now currently.
Yeah, the election hasn't even been certified yet, so
right.
I kind of want to just sit back, enjoy a couple weeks off, and, you know, talk to family. Thanksgiving break was really nice, you know, because the couple weeks after the election, we were still kind of running around, took some time to chill out a little bit, and now
right.
we can kind of see where things are certified, where things finalize, and then move from there.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, we can't wait to have you back on the show and pick your brain and see what you're up to. Of
course.
But I really didn't get a sense you hitting on the voter fraud. Is there voter fraud in your area, or is this something that's just a pie in the sky, conspiracy theory? What is going on in that area where you're at? Did you see any issues?
It's definitely something that, you know, when you bring it up, whether you're on national news, local news, social media, every time someone brings it up, you kind of goes back to, oh, you're just being a typical Republican conspiracy theorist because we're the ones that are always claiming voter fraud. And you see some pretty strong examples over in Florida and Arizona with some sketchy things going on. But to keep it just local in Southern California, you know, I didn't want to be one of those guys saying, oh, I lost because of massive voter fraud. Obviously, that's not something a candidate wants to do just after a fresh loss. So I did some looking into it. And there really are some troubling statistics. Here in District 32, there's about 321,000 registered voters. And In the 2014 primary election, a Republican candidate, Art Loss, did very well. You know, our district is only 21.5% registered Republican, and he finished with 40% of the vote against Grace
Wow.
Napolitano. And in that election, that was the last midterm election that we had, and she got 50,353 votes. I'm looking at it right now.
50,000?
And 50,353,
And-
which
and
is
before
a
she
relatively,
had gotten-
that was in 2014.
Okay.
And here in the 2018 midterm election, I'm looking at it right now, she got 119,531 votes. And they're still counting, I presume, you know, over the last, you know, they still have another week to do it at the registrar. And that's an incredible jump. I mean, obviously, people were talking about how Democrats were mobilized, you know, they don't like Trump, there's a blue wave coming, blah, blah, blah. But here's my issue with that. In District 32, we are on the map. We're mostly a part of the 48th Assembly District.
Right.
And the 48th Assembly District was, the Democrat candidate was Blanca Rubio. She's an incumbent. And there was no Republican running against her. She did not campaign for a total of 2 minutes. She did absolutely nothing. And my opponent, Congresswoman Grace Napolitano, the Democrat incumbent, she did absolutely nothing. There was no signs, there was no rallies, there was no door knocking, there was no phone calls. There was no real sense of urgency among the Democrats in the district. Most of the political signs that I saw around were, you know, school board and other local elections, which is great. But I really didn't see any urgency among the Democrats campaigning-wise. Obviously, they didn't need to.
Spending.
Exactly. So they just kind of chilled. One of them ran unopposed. I came in at the last minute. So obviously, they didn't think they had to do much. And she gets more than 2 times what she got in 2014. I don't know. It's just something that I've been kind of analyzing and looking at, and you can.
Well, something to be aware of, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I've also read that in Orange County, where they flipped, 5 or 6 districts to where the entire county is now blue, but John Cox, the Republican candidate for governor, got like 2,000 more votes in the county, and the congressional candidates got absolutely wiped out. So those are just some examples. Those are some things we talk about at the dinner table at my house, like, hey, what's really going on out there? Now, those are the only specific examples and theories that I have. I'm not going to go out there, you know, throwing conspiracy
Well, I will.
theories
What
around.
I'll tell you is, figures don't lie, but liars can figure.
Yeah, so from one midterm election to another, 119,000 to 50,000, I don't know.
I mean, there are a lot of questions.
Lots of questions.
There are a lot of questions. And one of the things, you know, I ran for U.S. Senate, and I was looking at this very specifically because Dianne Feinstein's and the Senate seat is a statewide seat, right? And in fact, LA County is considered to be one of the most corrupt counties. It is the largest county in the United States in terms of vote, populace, what have you. She won with over 70% in the primary. So did Maxine Waters. So did Adam Schiff. Okay, so while these people are winning by 70%, 70% large margin wins, and no campaigning.
Correct. So
No
they're
campaigning.
expanding their numbers
No
from
signs.
previous elections.
No signs, name recognition from poor performance, dissatisfied populace. Only a couple people mentioned they actually liked Dianne Feinstein during my campaign. But the one interesting thing I found when I looked at the numbers, because again, numbers don't lie, but we have a lot of liars in our system. So, and that's what I have a problem with, is the corruption. When you look at the midterm and you look at prior midterms and you look at undervotes versus overvotes, okay, because you have undervotes and overvotes, during the midterm election versus the presidential election, and the patterns of undervotes versus overvotes in the midterm primary versus the general election, there's a big difference in these numbers, and nobody's asking why. People know they can only vote for one person. It says right on there, and in fact, there are a lot of different reasons why there might be undervotes or overvotes, right? But the numbers are really, really glaring. And nobody is looking at them and saying, what's the problem here? And Democrats, I mean, I don't want to talk Democrat or Republican here or there or the other. Elections should be honest. They should be honest. And it doesn't matter who you are, you should want to know that your vote counts, your vote matters, and that our process is solid. Because no matter whatever's happening on one side can sure as heck tip and go to the other. I mean, it can go full circle. These things can impact all of us. They do impact all of us. But those numbers don't add. They don't fly with me. And I have a problem with all the people in office who are doing nothing about them and asking the questions or making solutions. So we're going to be working on that over the next 4 years. But to talk to your point about conspiracy theories, I don't believe the people are going off of like this conspiracy theory. Oh, it's election fraud. Oh, you know, people have experienced a huge disservice in terms of the elections. In a primary, over 100,000 people were dropped off of the voter rolls in LA County. That's enough to make anybody, it doesn't matter your party affiliation, concerned about the integrity of our elections and the accuracy and the validity of your vote. You know, and that is a concern. Just making sure it's right, correct and proper. Whoever wins fair and solid, great. That's what the people wanted. But again, you know, we don't want to go pie in the sky conspiracy theory, but the people have felt it. It's been real for them here in California, and they've watched some disconcerting things. Like you saw this ring of petition persons going around and gathering different kinds of fraudulent signatures and other things. I mean, there's a lot of shifty things happening. There need to be repercussions. As to your race,
can I add to that?
Yeah.
You know, one thing, especially here in California, that kind of takes away from our election integrity are the biases in the media and within the establishment where all the money is. Because Mark Moisier, our candidate for Secretary of State here in California, I've never met anyone that was more of an expert on election law and the election process. Mm-hmm. And when that guy talks to you about how our election system works and the flaws that are in it, that guy is presenting to you some real logical facts. And throughout his campaign, he talked to so many Republicans, Democrats, whoever you are, and just kind of explained to them the facts of how things are and what he will do when he's elected to fix them. But it's just such a shame that here in California, you know, obviously the media and the establishment, they're not going to give him the time of day. And since there's not a lot of resources here in California for Republicans to you know, expand and touch millions of voters, he wasn't able to get his word out to enough people to win an election. And it's just such a shame, because I don't know if I've met a better candidate during this election cycle that would have been better at his job. You know what I mean? Right.
No, I agree. And he came across as neutral about honest and fair elections. And it doesn't matter who you are, your vote should count, and it should be accounted for. And the integrity of our system is vital. Otherwise, people won't participate, and then we'll just be like every other nation here on the globe, which is corrupt. I say maybe we, you know, and I'm talking now just in conversation, some things need to change. And in the media, and where the media are concerned, they have freedom of the press, right? But when Joe Schmo, who's in the Secretary of State position, talks about something, he gets free press for the Secretary of State position. He's an elected official. What about if he's running for re-election and is now also a candidate? And what about if he's on the TV and he's getting free press being in that position and he's also a candidate? Why can't the opposing candidates have the same amount of allotted time that they're supposed to have and offer up solutions for that same position? Media is not serving the people by encouraging information for the people.
It is a huge shame, especially here in our state. Like you said, it doesn't really matter what your party is. It just matters that things are free and fair, and they really are the farthest thing from it right now. And that's why I got involved at such a young age. You know, if things weren't so dire right now, I would have been one of those people that, you know, sits on their couch, screams the news, and then just deals with whoever gets elected. People like you and I see that things really are. That's how the situation is right now. It's tough. And we have to fight for our freedoms because they're slowly and surely being removed out of our lives, especially in the electoral system. And that's why, as a young person, I want to step up now, be a leader, and hopefully reform our system and have things, go through with integrity in the future.
That is wonderful. And we thank you for stepping up. It takes people like you who are brave and willing to put their lives on hold, literally, and one way or another to look to serving the people. Question. Have you heard about the prospective CAGOP chairman's race? Are you going to be involved in that or watching that? Have you been plugged into this process? It's kind of exciting.
Right, so it is. It's a cool thing. Obviously, like we talked about, our party's in a little bit of a tough situation right now. But I think what we can do is, we can make it exciting. We can make it fun going forward and be effective and efficient and have fun. I am fairly involved with our county party and a couple of the assembly districts that I work with pretty closely. Obviously, everyone has some pretty strong opinions right now due to
everyone has a strong opinion.
Right, we do have the fresh
politics are concerned.
Right, especially with our fresh Republican wounds from November 6th. And I am aware of a couple people that are going to be running for chairman. I know former Assemblyman David Howley is going to be running. He announced his candidacy at the previous LA GOP meeting. I know former gubernatorial candidate Travis Allen is going to be running. And I know there are a few others that are going to be throwing their hat in the ring. And normally I'm the type of person that would say, oh, I know him and I like him previously, so I'm going to jump on the bandwagon and support. But at this point, the way things stand in our party, I am willing to listen to every candidate, and I want to hear all their messages, and I'm going to vote for the man or woman that puts the best foot going forward and the one that convinces me that our party does have a future in this state and that we're gonna do some great things going forward.
That's wonderful. For those listeners here who are just joining us, this is Joshua Scott. He is former candidate for, well, actually, he's still kind of a candidate. The vote hasn't been certified
That's
yet.
Right, you never know.
December 7th, you never know. Maybe the last of the ballots are all Republican. He ran in 2018 for Assembly District, Congressional District 32. We're talking to him right now about the CAGOP chairman position, which opens up, and for those people who may not be aware, because not everybody is really tied into California politics or maybe even the process, and we talk about this quite frequently, you have to be involved. Now, you and me and just regular people can't make those decisions. We can't go to convention and make those decisions. We have to be involved in our party.
Actually, I am a delegate now that I got my nomination. And I was the top performing Republican in Los Angeles County as far as congressional candidates, which is kind of cool. So I have some further delegates after that. So I will absolutely be very influential in this process, and I can't wait to be a part of it. And I'll be sure to keep you posted on my feelings going forward.
Well, what I wanted to tell our viewers, though, is that how this process works. See, Joshua Scott, he is a delegate. And you and me, Joshua Scott may be able to vote, but you and me may not be able to vote or participate in the way that Joshua Scott does. But you know what we can do? We can be involved in our local party. We can network and we can talk to the people who are there, who may be delegates, and find out more, make influence in certain ways that we can, and connect and be impactful. Because guess what? The people like Joshua Scott go to convention and they hear the speakers, they hear the people address the people who are up for this chairman position, and then they vote. And Joshua Scott, he's your voice if you're in his, this is a powerful process. It really is. This is how I look at this in terms of how our country was built, Joshua, is that we have representatives of the people, and in our own party, we have representatives, so to speak, and delegates. I don't know if you call it representative, but it's an important component because a very small amount of people are actually influencing the process. for the entire state of California in terms of the Republican Party. And you are
Right.
one of those people. But the people at home, not everybody understands how that works. So that's why I wanted to just kind of talk about that a little bit, and I'll go into that in another piece after you and I get off of the interview. But this is important. This is important because this will impact a lot of decisions that are made going forward, especially for the CAGOP, which has struggled.
No, you're absolutely right about that. And I think the most important thing is that those who take power within the party need to be on the same page as the average voter, because something I saw over the last couple of years, and especially this election cycle, is that's not the case right now. The average Republican voter and citizen, they do support President Trump's America First agenda. I believe at the CPAC conference earlier this year, I think, or last year, what was it, like 93% of Republican voters support the America First agenda. But when you look at within the party, I feel like there's kind of a little bit of a threat towards who's going to have the power. People aren't on the same page, and I got kind of a weird vibe with this election.
I think their focus is off. Their focus is politically it's focused on the politics and some of the issues at hand, but mainly the politics and the people involved, as opposed to the people who are actually out there, the people who these individuals have a voice for. Okay,
right,
and that's the problem. There's a disconnect.
Just going back to the struggle within our party, obviously, like I said, Republican voters, they agree with the president, they agree with the agenda, and they're enthusiastic about it. But I was actually featured in a Washington Post article about a month before the election, and one thing they talked about was the fact that I think there are over 40 districts here in the USA that did not have a Republican candidate. And think about how many more there would have been if there weren't proud Americans like me who stepped up and said, hey, the people deserve a choice. So we're looking at, there could have been 100 out of 435 districts without a Republican candidate, and that's just absolutely unacceptable. Like right now, we're trying to keep our taxes low. We're trying to secure a border, which now is more important than ever. We're supporting our allies at home and abroad, and this was such an important election, and we did so well in the Senate. And I can tell you exactly why we did so poorly in the House. We just laid it out there right here. And so after I realized that was our situation, the November 6th results were very predictable. And now yeah.
Well, for me, the Republican Party is not fighting for me.
No.
I'm a Republican. And it feels like and maybe this is a false sense of view, but it feels like the Republican Party isn't fighting for me in California. They're not advocating for me. They're not advocating for everything in their platform that they're saying that they're going to. I've read all the emails. I read all the gubernatorial candidate emails. I've read the CAGOP emails. I've read it all. And it just feels like they aren't going to bat. The Democrats, they go to bat. They circle the wagons, and we have to be better about that. And in order to do that, we have to be more unified, have better and stronger communication. And I think that's what you're talking about in terms of the CAGOP and getting on that same page. Because if we're not, then we're just at ends with our own party and we defeat ourselves. We do the Democrats' work for them.
Yeah, seriously. Going on for what you're saying, part of the problem is that we have people that basically, as a California Republican that's trying to win seats in a state like this, blue state, where the Republicans in each district are outnumbered by Democrats and no party preference independent voters, what a lot of campaigns try to do is to put a message out there that kind of placates to winning over Democrats and winning over independents. So they try and say, oh, we need them to win, we need to flip voters, which is true, but they decide to come off with a little bit more of a moderate, placated approach to winning these voters. And that is the absolute opposite of what I did. And I think that's one of the reasons why I had relative success in my district, is because when I would talk to Democrats, I didn't make excuses for our rhetoric, or I didn't, try and say, oh, we're going to be moderate here so we can work with you. I'm going to say, no, you need border security and we need a legislature that's going to get rid of sanctuary cities so you and your proud Democrat family, your proud independent family can be safe. I want your gas tax to be eliminated. Vote yes on 6. Right. I want you to have further middle class tax cuts off of your off your salary, and I would push our agenda on them and explain to them why it was right and why it was necessary and why it was doing so well. I wouldn't kind of try and find that middle ground to get their vote. And I think that's what the party has to do going forward. We need to get aggressive with our message and an agenda that's working out very well right now, and put it across the opposite message that the media is giving us, where they try and say, oh, they're racist and they're homophobic, they're xenophobic. That's where these laws come from, and we say, no, we believe in this because of this.
People before politics.
It works.
Yes, people before politics. Principled leadership is definitely needed, and I do believe that's in line with what I was saying, where you're saying that standing by your value system, standing by your policy, standing by your agenda, if you was the word you used. If people can clearly understand why, then they can back you. And going back to what I was saying earlier about wishy-washy and not being represented by the party, or feeling like they're not advocating and fighting for me, that's the same thing. It's like this wishy-washy, middle of the road. People want to know where they stand, and then they can make a decision. Right. And I'm right with you there. So you're relatively young. You ran for office. What else are you up to?
Yeah. So up until this election, I was campaigning all throughout Southern California. As I mentioned the last time we were together, I was working very closely with Dr. Ken Wright.
Right.
And last year I worked as an analyst in a private intelligence company in Israel. And I think that was the main thing that drove me to get involved with politics. I love America and I love our allies, Israel especially, and we need strong individuals like myself advocating for the right thing these days, because in my opinion, I don't see too many young people advocating for at least what I believe is the right thing, that's for sure. And so that's why I kind of went full throttle all of 2018. And although my ideologies in the region that I live in came up a little unsuccessful, we're just going to keep going. Like I said, I already have some really awesome things in the works for the future, and I can't wait to keep you posted on them, because
absolutely.
Yeah, things are going to be good. It's hard to kind of put a smile on your face right now, but I do have a lot of confidence.
Great. I've got a smile on my face. I don't know about you, but I do. People are really down. They're kind of Republicans do not feel represented by their party in terms of fighting for them and the election, some of the fraud that we've seen and other things. But it isn't that bad. I mean, what really happened, with the Senate and losing a few seats in the House? Prior presidents have seen much, much worse in terms of the loss of the House. I mean, huge. So we won in essence because we held ground. We did take a few little hits, but we held ground in that we didn't do just a complete slaughter like has happened before. And that speaks to me about how President Donald Trump's America First agenda is so relevant to the American people. Because if it wasn't, we would have met all of those lost House seats as prior presidents historically have done for years. And so what, as a young Republican, what do you see that as a testament to for Trump 2020 and the next set of cycle? I mean, you may or may not be running again, but what do you see in terms of the House? Is it going to get worse? Do you think it might get better? How do you see that playing out over the next 2 years? I'm just curious what your viewpoint is.
Between you and me, Erin, I'm still hopeful of running in a special election. I'm still hopeful of running in a special election early in 2019 because of all the voter fraud that they're going to find here at the LA Registrar and throughout the nation. Who knows? But in all seriousness, I do believe that the average Republican voter is in favor of the America First agenda, and I think if we campaign the right way and register voters and actually light a fire under ourselves, that we will be very successful in 2020 with the presidential election, House elections, Senate elections. And I think the funny thing is about this election that we had a few weeks ago is that not all of the leverage was used. I know a lot of people expected President Trump to declassify the infamous FISA documents that are just sort of looming over all of us right now. Which
you know what? I'm proud of him for not. I've seen other presidents use timing and do things and undermine our elections. They say they haven't or they aren't, but they do. And I'm glad he's going about process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It was the integrity move, and I respect him for doing it. But I also believe that the public does deserve to know what's been going on in our country over the last few years, and how once these documents are declassified, I truly believe that it's going to be proof that the previous administration and the federal agencies that worked with him were actively working to bring down President Trump's campaign and his presidency after being elected. And I think that's why, I speak with so many of my peers, a lot of them liberal millennials, and they don't understand why the president's constantly railing against our federal agencies like the DOJ, the FBI, and the CIA. They don't really understand, how could there be that much animosity? And it's because it's starting to really look like that before he was elected, they all kind of worked together along with other intelligence agencies with our allies in the UK and Australia. Yeah, exactly.
More than likely.
It's a pretty incredible phenomenon that's brewing underneath us right now. Is just you don't really see it talked about in the mainstream media, and it's really wild. Say again.
Why would they talk about it? It doesn't serve their agenda. That goes back to the first, our First Amendment, freedom of the press, where I was telling you about said incumbent who's also a candidate because he's running for re-election, talks on an issue. He's talking as both a candidate and an incumbent, really. And other candidates don't get to voice maybe what they would do, even if the press did it in another way. They aren't. The press is not serving the people. Why in the heck would they do actual investigative journalism to use the powers that as they have to go after the information they need to provide the people with information that they deserve to have? Why would they? It's not in their best interest, not according to the agenda. So that's unfortunate, and I think they're very much complicit in all of this.
Oh, there's absolute complicity in it. And you mentioned investigative journalists that are digging for the right things. The sad part is those
I don't think
people,
they know how to dig.
Yeah, the thing is, those people do exist. Is just that they're viciously shadow banned. And one of the scary things about it, I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, Laura Loomer. She's an investigative journalist, and she's 25 years old. She's a Jewish conservative, which is exactly what I am. She's out there advocating for the right things and sprinting around and trying to show the public the truth, as I am. And she gets banned from Twitter and Facebook for advocating for the things she believes in. And one of the reasons I got into politics is because I've seen a lot of people with ties to radical Islamic extremism enter our political arena, kind of like Linda Sarsour. That's I told you in our last interview, that's one of the reasons I got involved here in Southern California, is because she's deeply embedded in the Democrat Party. And then Laura Loomer goes and criticizes Ilhan Omar for having the same radical ties as Linda Sarsour does, and she gets banned from the internet for it. And it's
these
crazy.
Two other individuals can have a megaphone. This is the hypocrisy, and it's all shielded by the liberal left, the progressive liberal left, as being corporate. This is a corporation. It has personhood. Well, you know what? I don't buy it. I can't wait till it goes to the Supreme Court. All of this, because it needs addressed that this is now how we communicate. Social media is a platform. All of these social media platforms are the way that we communicate now. And for them to have people who are involved with terrorist organizations or different kinds of ties and provide influence and say things as extreme as Sarsour has said, suggesting that Americans, jihad, Americans need to be Jews wiped off the planet. Basically, it's disgusting that she would be allowed to continue her megaphone, and yet Laura Loomer, who's merely trying to expose election fraud and expose some other individuals by providing truth, gets shut down. It's horrible. It's wrong, and it needs to be stopped. And I'm not a fan of more regulation, but certainly something needs to be done. Well, we're very proud of you for stepping up and being a loud voice and an influencer, especially here in California. Cool level heads, younger generations getting involved in politics. It's pretty phenomenal, So you taking a break for the holiday season? Is it, you have big plans? What's going on with you?
Like I said, things kind of slowed up a little over Thanksgiving. I'm still in contact with a lot of people within LA County that have the same feelings I do, slightly disgruntled, but also incredibly motivated to kind of work together towards the future. So, I've lot of little meetings, a lot of contacts. Luckily, the center that I ran my campaign out of in District 32 is still operating 5 days a week. So we go in there all the time. We say, hey, if you want to come meet with us, let's have a meeting. And I think after the first of the year, once all the holidays are over and everyone's kind of back to the grind, you're gonna see some really strong things coming out of my camp, and I really can't wait for it.
Well, I'm excited to hear, and I'm also excited to hear about your activities at the CAGOP convention. I like to remind people we are the GOP. We are the Republican Party. Not everybody may be a delegate like you, but they can get involved in their local county meetings, in their local caucus meetings. They can become delegates as well. They can also be, there's a process to get on your central committees, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the GOP. We need to definitely take a more active role. And you're a prime example of the greatness that's out there today. Thank you so much, Joshua Scott, for coming on the show.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate it. And can I throw one more thing out there I actually just thought of?
You can throw two if you'd like.
No. Okay, awesome. So kind of going back to the examples of election fraud and that things that just kind of make you ask questions. So there was a lot of fuss about the propositions on the ballot this year, how they're written and all that and everything. And I was very, very involved with that. And one thing that I worked very closely with were Propositions 5 and 10. And Proposition 5 and 10 both had implications in the real estate market, rent control and property tax movement among seniors when they move to a new property and whatnot. And it seemed to me that the major lobby behind those propositions, at least on the conservative Republican side, were vote no on 10 and yes on 5, correct? That seemed to be the consensus. And with Proposition 10, it overwhelmingly voted no. I think it was close to 60%, and we got our way with that. But Prop 5 was also overwhelmingly no, and it wound up being no by, I think it was close to 60-40, maybe 53, whatever. So that just kind of makes me ask the question, they were both lobbied the same way, right? So how does one vote so heavily one way and then the other vote literally by hundreds of thousands of votes the other way? It just none of it really adds up to me.
Marketing? Voter fraud?
It could be, but they were both lobbied the same way.
Well,
so, I don't know. It's just another one of those things that makes you ask questions.
Well, it makes you scratch your chin and wonder why. It's the same thing as Orange County going from from red to blue when the gubernatorial race is clearly still red. And I'm not saying that everybody is a party line voter, okay? But if people are voting for a gubernatorial candidate who's a Republican, this would lend you to believe that that's a very, if it were the other way around, a congressional candidate and they're, red and a blue Democrat, I might go, okay, that kind of makes sense because they're completely two separate leanings. But what happened is I think, a perfect example of your proposition issue right there. It causes you to scratch your head and wonder why, because it doesn't add up.
That's correct. So it's something for us to work on and then talk about next time, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see if everybody will sign their names and certify this vote and be willing to stand behind it.
Well, everyone knows I haven't conceded yet, right? You heard it from me here. I have not conceded.
I never conceded.
That's right. So who knows, right? We'll see what happens over the next couple weeks.
But I'm just saying, it could happen. We just don't know, and we want what's right and what's good. That's all.
That is absolutely right. Absolutely.
So we'll see. Well, thank you so much again, and we'll catch up with you soon. And where can people follow you on social media? I forgot that point.
Right. Follow me on Twitter at Joshua Scott CA32. I got that blue check mark now, so we're in business. Took a little while, but we got it. Facebook, also Joshua Scott CA32 or Joshua Scott for Congress. And yeah, just get in contact with me on there and join our movement
Join the
because
conversation.
it's only just the beginning.
Yes, absolutely, and that's what we're here for. We really want to unite California on every level. Don't have to agree on everything, but we need to be united.
That's right. I'm with
the will
you.
of the people. All right. God bless you, Joshua Scott.
God bless you, Erin. Have a great holiday season, all right?
You as well.
All right, bye-bye.
There you have it from Joshua Scott. And actually, since looking at this and all of the information related to the interview, John Cox, in fact, actually is behind in the vote count in Orange County. And interestingly enough, he's behind in the entire county by, I guess you might call it a slight margin. The question really is, do the numbers add? WND, as marked in the article that's going to be inserted below, WND actually did an article on the information relating to this particular area of California and how it relates with the numbers, because in fact, early voting, if you will, or voting in standard form, John Cox was ahead in the entire county, and that would state that makes that county red when the county is actually on the congressional level blue. So as the governor, a statewide candidate, to have it red, have the congressional level be blue, it doesn't align. But now, as time has passed, the blue votes caught up. Some of the justifications for why that's happening all across the country is that Democrats are irresponsible and vote late. They only do provisional ballots, the day of, no, or mail-in ballots, which have to be counted and accounted for. And in the case of the provisionals, they have to not only be counted and accounted for, they have to be compared to and made sure that they did not vote in any other way. Because a provisional ballot, you have to basically sign an affidavit saying that you didn't mail in your ballot and you didn't vote at another polling place. So, is there justification? Are Democrats always late? Or are these ballots that appeared like in trunks of cars or in rental cars, as Laura Loomer had discovered? We don't know. What we really do need to know is that the vote is accurate, that it's honest, and that the people's vote matters, that elections matter. This is a republic, and we need to make sure that it's secured for future generations. So, that said, we would like to suggest that you contact your congressional representative currently, as well as the president, and let them know that you're concerned about our elections here in California, and let them know that you would like to ensure that their commission takes a look at the state. And you also, if you're in support of this, you'd also like national, federal voter ID. And that might help play a role in cutting back on some of these extra ballots, found ballots. As far as I'm concerned, I would like to see the registrars audited. We need to make sure that the voter rolls are cleaned and that the people who are hired, elected in Sacramento are doing their jobs to make sure that our elections are free. That should be a nonpartisan position. It should be something that helps all people, because the tables can turn. The tables can very much turn. It's about honesty and integrity, and that's where it's at. So make sure you make your voice heard. Contact the president, contact Congress, write, call, send them a love letter. Let them know what you think up in Sacramento, and make your voice heard. There are some petitions online. Sign the petitions. Get involved. Stay engaged. Also, the vote is not certified, and I've said this 4, 5, 6 times. I'm going to keep saying it because people need to realize this. Election night isn't the be-all, end-all. Okay, election night is just an iMark, just a glimpse of what it could be in terms of the count. The canvass of the vote takes near a month, and in California, it won't be certified until December 7th. So we still have over a week until the final vote is submitted, signed off on. Then at that point, once somebody puts their name on it, signed, sealed, delivered, then and only then can really action be taken in regards to looking at those numbers and following up on process. But don't wait until then to contact your congressional representatives, to contact President Trump, to write a letter to Sacramento to let them know that you want to make sure that your vote is received, counted, and that the elections are secure and the integrity is there. We deserve honest and fair elections. So make sure you stay engaged. Stay tuned for the next guest. You are Revolution America. I think that's important to say because people want solutions. They want answers. They're looking to other people. Many people are even looking to government, socialism here in the United States of America. I was asked today on Facebook, what are your solutions, Erin, to some of these big problems? You know what? I can give you a list of my solutions. As a matter of fact, I have solutions online on one of my websites that you can get to from erincruz.com. But here's the deal. The real and true solutions to the problems we face today are right here, right in that mirror, staring back at you. That's absolutely correct. We are the solution. We are the change we want to see in our home, in our community, in the state, and across the nation. We are the answer. And I wrote a book. It's called Revolution America. I know many of you have seen this before. I carry it around with me. I've also taken it across the state of California while I was campaigning, shared it with many people. We have to be better, stronger, faster, more efficient, the way we do things. One of the ways we can do that is by learning how to better communicate. One of the ways we can do that is by learning more about ourselves, really about how we think, how we operate in our own lives. This book is tiny, it's thin, it's action-packed, it's almost 20 years of my life. Business experience, communication experience, political experience. This is a mind war book, so to speak. This will help you in your political activism, also in your community groups. So please, if you haven't read it already, go to erincruz.com, pick up a copy, give it to somebody as a friend. It makes a great stocking stuffer, or, you don't have to be a Christian or celebrate Christmas to give it away, okay? You can just gift it because it will help people. And hey, after you read it, gift it, re-gift it to somebody. Really, anybody can take something from this book. Anybody can, if they want to see actionable change in their own lives, in their homes, in their communities, in their state, and across the nation. Yes, I said it twice. I repeat a lot of different things in this book. Have to be better, faster, stronger, smarter, and more efficient. So pick up your copy today. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get a copy for free. I believe they're on Kindle as well as Amazon. You can pick up this particular type of book, or you can go to Barnes & Noble, pick it up there. So go to erincruz.com, sign up for our newsletter, make sure that you hear about our next book that's coming out, and then the following 3 books in this particular series. We have a lot going on, and I really want to help our communities. This is my outreach. This is my work. I want to help us do better, and that I believe I can do. So partner with me, support the cause. Go ahead and take a look at erincruz.com. You can donate to our activism there. You can volunteer for different things. Take a look. Get involved. Be the change you want to see in your home, in your community, in your state, and across the nation. Stay tuned. We have another guest. Hello and welcome back to the Erin Cruz Show. We have Devin Mathis on the line. He is actually a current assemblyman for the 26th district. And I'm going to tell you, we had, as some might say, a difficult time in the election cycle here in 2018. I kind of beg to differ in some ways, in some sense of the word. We held the Senate over in D.C., and we also, the House, we didn't lose as many seats as historically have been lost here in the state of California, though. In the Assembly, the Democrats did gain back that supermajority, but, it's not December 7th. All the votes have not been counted yet, and I have to tell you, the guy on the line here, Devin, he literally got reelected. And we are looking so forward to seeing what he has planned when he goes back into his next term. Welcome to the Erin Cruz Show, Devin.
And thanks for having me back.
Oh, we're just so happy. So now, the year hasn't ended up yet. It's still rounding out. The counts are still coming in. There were a few upsets, but you made it. How does that feel?
Oh, it feels great. I mean, it's when you're looking around and, in my caucus, looks like we lost 5.
Right.
Yeah, that's a pretty tough hit, but, it's not over.
Could have been worse, right?
And nothing in politics is over. So, I mean, you've got to look at what was done, what worked and where it worked, and, kind of review and go, hey, okay, here's what we're doing right, here's what we're doing wrong, here's where, people are at in California and what they think. And I think that's the biggest thing in politics that a lot of people, get confused is they go, here's how I think, here's how the rest of everybody should think. And what you've got to look at is here's how everybody thinks, and are we on target or not?
Right. And what's working and what isn't, and what the needs of the populace are, especially as you're an assemblyman. And I know your district is rather large, but, still yet you have a certain demographic of people and certain needs of the populace there, and they're obviously going to vote for the person who's going to, what you would hope, do the best job in serving them up in D.C. I mean, in Sacramento. So.
No, absolutely. It's I say, the Greeks and Romans had all this stuff figured out with things like logos, ethos, and pathos. And when it comes to candidates, you've got to have the right person with the right message talking to the right people. And if you don't have all 3 of those things, you're going to lose. And if you do, you're going to win. And for me, it's, I represent the 26th district. It's Tulare County, part of Kern County, Olivenio County. And, I'm a Valley kid, born and raised. We joke and it's, I'm just a dirt poor Okie kid from, Porterville, California. But, I've also, grew up, I went, fought in the war, came home, went to college, and worked my way up the hard way.
Right, and you have a family. You're a family man as well, right? So.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And I got a bunch of kids, so my family, we're not a rich aristocracy family, but everybody here locally knows who we are. They know us. They trust our word. They know we work hard, and that we care about service and serving others.
Right. So now, talking about service, where do you see yourself moving forward, in January as things progress? There is a 2/3 majority. The Democrats have a stronghold now. Some of the biggest concerns, I would say, throughout California from the people I hear talking, Medicare for all, and some of these big chunk initiatives that they see the Democrats moving forward on. What do you see as one of the things that you're going to put forth in your reelection, and where do you see yourself fighting back for the people in your district and for the state of California?
Well, I mean, one of the things we're looking at, especially right now, is defunding the high-speed rail. I mean, we have all these cap and trade dollars. There's a handful of us that work really, really hard on reforming cap and trade from what it was as Senate Bill 32 and actually putting some measures in that thing and trying to make it a little bit better for businesses in the economy. And we fought really hard for that, and a lot of us went through a lot of political battles in the elections over that. And, you know, most of us that went up on that, who weren't on target seats, actually all the members that were for it that weren't in target seats actually won by larger margins than other people. And, you know, but one of the things with it is when you look at high-speed rail, you know, high-speed rail was something we went against. We still go against. I still don't agree with it. And everything that we're looking at right now, and even, you know, the state auditor is saying this thing's a boondoggle and needs to be shut down. So I'm going to run legislation to stop using cap and trade dollars for high-speed rail and have that money go back into those programs that are supposed to be, you know, for our health, for our benefit, for our businesses, our kids, our futures, and where it needs to be, not just throwing it away.
Right. Because that is what a lot of Californians, even Democrats, view the high-speed rail as. It's just this big empty pit, you know, like a money pit, like that movie where the couple buys this house, and they just keep throwing money on it, and it's already outdated. So there are concerns, and not saying that we don't. I think most people in California see that we have certain needs, and there might be a place or space for some type of mass transit, of course, but just how do we accomplish these things? Is it rail? Is it high speed? Is it, you know, I mean, how does populace get served and where? You know, it's a concern. So I'm glad to hear that you're going to be addressing that issue. Now, what about, for example, the Medicare for All? Because again, like I mentioned earlier, that is a concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, that is such a mess. And, you know, I think if people actually understood what it really is, you know, there's a reason why European countries are stepping away from it.
Right.
There's a reason why they're looking at other ways, because they've gone through and they've learned those lessons, and they're trying to figure all of that out. And, you know, when you look at the economics on these things, it's really, you know, that one's a tough pill to swallow. And, you know, I'm hoping that there are, you know, and I think one of the biggest things, too, is that people need to understand is when you get under the dome in Sacramento, it's not just Democrat versus Republican.
Right.
There's moderate Democrats, there's progressive Democrats. You know, these people come from all kinds of different shapes and backgrounds and everything else. And, you know, just because they're a Democrat doesn't mean that you can't work with them. And, you know, last year I was able to get a CEQA housing bill signed to get rid of CEQA litigation for fixing up, you know, the beaten up houses in our neighborhoods, so we can help get those houses fixed to help with the homeless problem.
Right.
And I had a Democrat from San Francisco who helped champion that with me. You know, who would think a San Francisco Democrat senator would team up with a Valley Republican and get a bill to the governor's desk and get it signed to cut the red tape of CEQA of the California Environmental Quality Act? But we did it. Right. And, you know, I've always taken the approach, maybe it's because I'm a military guy, but it's who can we get at the table? What resources can they bring? What's the mission? How do we get it done? I don't care who's at the table, as long as we're working on the goal.
It needs to serve the people, too. You know, this is the issue, is it's just so much of the problems we see are agenda. It doesn't matter what side. And really, the people are the ones who are suffering right now. And the politics needs to get out of the way, and the people need to be put first, and their needs. So,
well, Erin, you said it. That you just said my platform that I run on every year. For me, it's never been about pushing a political agenda. It hasn't been about, I mean, as much as I want to see the Republican Party succeed, that's how I grew up. I know, and I got raised, and my grandma was around. We grew up on Reagan and Jesus.
That's not a bad mix. It's not a bad mix. But that was when
not a bad
politics
mix.
aren't what they are today.
Not
I
a
mean,
bad mix at all. But Republicans don't follow the Reagan 11th commandment. They'd rather say you're not conservative enough and burn you at the stake, and that doesn't work. One of the things I've been reflecting on is through all my studies and everything else in college, one of the things we went through was the Catholic Reformation, and how Martin Luther came out and pinned his findings on the door and walked off, and then you have the Protestant church start. But at some point, the Catholics realized this wasn't working out for them, and burning people at the stake didn't work, and they changed their ways and moved forward. And we've got to do a deep dive as a party and figure out what we're going to do and how to better serve the people, because we all know the Democrat approach of socialism isn't working.
well, it won't work.
And it doesn't
Right.
work. And you look at Venezuela, you look at Greece, you look at these countries that have gone that way, and they're just torn apart, and their people are suffering more and more.
Right.
And
We have record
for me,
homelessness here.
I didn't go to war, Erin, to have my home here in California that I love and care deeply about, and see my friends and neighbors suffer.
Right.
And, but at the same time, you don't convert people to your side with hellfire and brimstone. You have to have a conversation from the heart.
Right.
And be meaningful and talk about, the things that matter. And the things that matter to people are their families, is keeping a roof over their head, feeding their kids, making sure their kids have programs after school so they're not getting in trouble. And I think that's one of the things, Republicans really need to work on, is we're always talking about business.
Important. Communication and messaging is really important. It's something that I believe has been lost.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I always look at, I'm, like you said, I'm a family man. I look at, how does this affect my family? How does this affect my neighbor's family and the folks I go to church with? And if at the end of the day, when I cast votes, can I explain this is how this affects your family? This is, the cause and the effect. Can I communicate that message? And that's what I look at. And that's what I communicate, and I think that's why, my reelection, we won by just about 20%.
Yeah, I saw you.
That's pretty
You're
good.
at 58% right now, right?
Yep.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a pretty for time and standard right now in California. That's a pretty nice little wide margin there. So yes. Well, I have to tell you, we're just so grateful that you've run for office again and are willing to put yourself out there after serving your country. And we know you have a family, and your heart is for the people. We're just glad that you stepped up and are willing to do the work, because it is hard work. It is hard work. And, we look forward to hearing more from you, as time goes on, maybe in March, see how things are going, because I think California has a lot of problems, but you are right. We have to communicate more, communicate effectively, and ensure that the message is being heard, because that is our weak spot, and we know it. So now we can do something with it, right? But we have to also spread that message, because I think that some in the Republican Party are a little hard of hearing.
Well, Erin, it's, that's why it's a blessing that we have you doing your show and help, to get the word out and let people understand. There's a voice of reason out there, and there's, Republicans that have common sense that want to, and younger Republicans at that,
Right.
that not all millennials are, a bunch of crazy snowflakes or, the next generation of hippies or something like that. Like
Right.
some of our elders would like people to believe.
Right.
And coming from being one of the first millennial, combat veterans with a Purple Heart elected in the country, I sit here and I look at it, and it's, I understand the things that my generation cares about, and
Right.
grew up, in those society norms of, what was taboo for our parents is normal for us, and getting people to understand those things. Yeah, these things have changed, and maybe we shouldn't be dying on a cross for them. Maybe we need to look at how to communicate that better. How I personally feel, from growing up and my upbringing and my religion and everything else isn't necessarily how society always feels.
Well, you're there to serve your district, and that's a whole slew
Bingo.
of people. So it's not just religious. There's going to be atheists. There's going to be agnostics. There's going to be all married different groups of people. So it's I think that you have to be able to communicate the message, and the people have to get the message as well, and you're serving everyone, not just one person, one group type. So that's also an important thing to
No,
do.
you said it though. You're not there to serve yourself.
Right.
The job is to serve the people that you represent. And I think that's where a lot of folks in politics get it wrong. They might get in thinking, this is about service and all the great things they say in their campaigns. But you have to be dedicated, and you have to understand it's not about yourself.
Right.
It's not about how you as an individual may feel on a subject. And I've cast some really hard votes. And
well, you'll
I've
be held accountable to them. That's for certain.
And I've had a hard time with some of them. And I've, but at the same time, I've lived to tell the tale.
Well, I have to tell you, thank you again so much for running, and going up for re-election. And we have to end the interview right now, but I want to tell you, thank you again so much, Devin. And
no, Erin, again, thank you. I love being on with you. I love that you're out there getting the message out for us and just bringing some common sense to the whole thing.
Well, we're here anytime if you want to speak up, and God bless you, and hold tight up there in Sacramento, okay?
Will do.
All right. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you again for joining us for another edition of the Erin Cruz Show. Make sure you tune in next week. We're going to have some really hot topics and some great people on, candidates, maybe future candidates. I don't know. But tune in next week. Please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to all of our channels. Go to erincruz.com. Go to the bottom of the page. There's social links there. Connect. I can't say it enough. Make sure you connect. This is how we're going to get back on track here in the state of California and also throughout the nation and Trump 2020, baby. So thank you again for your support.